What if Sonic the Hedgehog had a mainline game on the Sega Saturn? That's a thought exercise I'd like to explore today, and we're going to do that by exploring the Sonic games we did get on the Sega Saturn, dispelling some of the myths about the Saturn's capabilities, and looking at fan games to see what could have been. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to challenge the commonly accepted narrative of Sonic Saturn years. We have some wild developer quotes and discoveries to discuss, and I personally had a blast revisiting several Saturn titles for this video. When we say Sonic skipped the Sega Saturn, we have to include a massive asterisk. We did get Sonic 3D Flicky's Island, Sonic Jam, and Sonic R during the Saturn's short-lived time on this Earth, with each game providing valuable insight into what a new game could have looked like. Those releases, however, were largely an apology and plan B for a game we didn't get, Sonic X-treme. We could spend an entire video on this topic, and maybe we will in the future, but the short version is that while Sonic Team were off developing everything other than Sonic, Sega Technical Institute were working away on what would have been Sonic's next mainline game, Sonic X-treme. We've learned a lot about the game over the years, such as how it was originally being made for the 32X under the name Sonic Mars, how it nearly killed two of its key developers, and why it was ultimately cancelled after Yuji Naka discovered it was using the NiGHTS into Dreams engine and threatened to quit Sega again. Sonic X-treme was first unveiled at E3 in the summer of 1996, slated for a Christmas release. It appeared in various magazines, including the official Sega Saturn magazine, Games Master, and Computer and Video Games. Excitement ranged from OSSM proudly proclaiming, "Sonic is about to make a comeback of gigantic proportions." Scheduled for a Christmas release, Sonic X-treme is already up and running, and true to previous Sonic releases, is looking absolutely great. Through to Games Master's less enthusiastic, an early version of the game was on show. The official Sega Saturn magazine would then provide a concerning update a couple of months later in issue 10. The new Sonic game was unveiled to thunderous applause at the recent E3 show, but since then the game, along with its creators, seem to have gone into hibernation, before attempting to reassure readers with, "However, Sonic X-treme will still be out by Christmas." Spoiler alert, it wouldn't be. In issue 12 of that same magazine, we were informed that, despite some promising coding, the Sega Technical Institute's Sonic X-treme has been canned. Instead, a Saturn translation of Sonic 3D Flicky's Island will appear for Saturn. Hilariously, the editorial team tried to spin this. In issue 15, they claimed there were some Saturn-based Sonic projects on the boil at Sega of America earlier this year, notably Sonic X-treme. But when the head of Sonic Team, Yuji Naka, saw a work-in-progress version of a new 3D Sonic game for the Mega Drive, he thought it was so good that he asked all other Saturn Sonic work to be put on hold in favour of a conversion. Sonic Blast 3D is the result of that decision, and it's scheduled to finally hit the shops in February of 1997. Yeah, they expected us to believe that Sonic 3D on the Mega Drive supposedly impressed Yuji Naka so much that he halted all development on Sonic X-treme, instead ordering a port of 3D. Obviously that wasn't the case. Since then we've had numerous interviews and exposés that have revealed what really happened. Issue 22 of Retro Gamer, released in 2006, claims Yuji Naka himself appeared to loathe the project. This is corroborated in the 2012 book, The History of Sonic the Hedgehog, where Chris Sen, lead developer of X-treme, was quoted as saying, "Yuji Naka saw the demo of Sonic Mars without saying a word, and then shook his head and wished us good luck." That is some British-level shade right there. That History of book goes on to say Sonic X-treme's developers asked for the 3D engine of NiGHTS into Dreams. This was Yuji Naka's future game. When he learned that his work was being used by Sega Technical Institute, his blood boiled, and he requested that his 3D engine be given back to him. The fact that STI lost access to their technology also meant the end of development on Sonic X-treme. This is confirmed by Chris Sen in issue 22 of Retro Gamer, saying Sonic was a franchise he clearly felt should be handled solely by Sonic Team, at least with major Sonic titles. He must have felt very strongly about it if he was willing to even threaten to quit. So yeah, Naka killed the project seemingly out of pride and refusal to be a team player. Sadly, this isn't unusual behaviour for him. In issue 26 of Retro Gamer, it's claimed that Hirokazu Yasuhara quit shortly after the release of Sonic & Knuckles, citing an argumentative relationship with Naka. Meanwhile, reflecting on the development of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in issue 175, Craig Stitt, an artist for Sonic 2, put it very bluntly, saying, "Naka was an arrogant pain in the ass." These days we have access to leaked prototypes and impressive fan recreations that run on real hardware, and as much as I'm impressed by Team Voxel's work in giving us something playable, and I in no way condone Yuji Naka's frankly terrible attitude, I can agree that Sonic X-treme wasn't very good. The level design is kind of aimless, the fisheye lens makes me feel a little bit ill, and conceptually it feels a little too close to another Saturn game called Bug. Anyway, that's enough about a game that never saw the light of day. Let's instead investigate the games we did get to make up for X-treme's absence. Surely the first one would be the enhanced port of Sonic 3D that official Sega Saturn magazine hyped up, right? Nope, instead we need to take a detour to Christmas Nights, a festive demo I received as a bonus disc taped to the front of a magazine, because that's how old I am. What does this Sonic Team promo for a completely separate title have to do with our favourite blue hedgehog though? When we finish a run of Christmas Nights, we get to open presents in a matching minigame. Find two of the same present, we unlock a bonus feature. Pick Riala, and the minigame ends prematurely. Eventually we'll be presented with a grid that has Sonic tucked away in it. This unlocks a new game mode, Sonic Into Dreams. While NiGHTS flies around a stage collecting orbs to break a series of cages under a time limit and then fighting a boss, Sonic is grounded. We run around a small 3D environment collecting orbs by following an almost crazy taxi-esque arrow and jumping at them. Sonic also gets a different boss fight, which is a reskin of an actual boss fight from the full NiGHTS Into Dreams. This is weird. I remember this mode being so much better in my head, but it's awkward, clunky, and that running animation is hilariously bad. This was definitely a proof of concept, and that concept was, sadly, undercooked. Sonic's model was adorable though. Our next glimpse into what a fully 3D Saturn Sonic could have been like is found in Sonic 3D Flicky's Island. While the main gameplay is the same isometric, sprite-based exploration game we saw on the Mega Drive, albeit with enhanced visuals and a new soundtrack, the special stages were replaced with a brand new take on Sonic 2's half-pipes. These are wonderful, and it's a shame that Sega always ports the Mega Drive version of this game, as more Sonic fans deserve to experience these levels. It evolves the formula with new twists such as gates that award more rings the faster you reach them, platforms in the sky, and actual vomit-inducing twisters. Some of these ideas would come back in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, which might be the closest analogue most of us have available to sit down and play. My only gripes here are that these stages are a touch too easy. Even making multiple mistakes, I passed them all on my first attempt. There's also a spin dash which, we can use it, but there's no reason to. Why is this here? Overall though, these are beautifully presented, have great music, and are some of my favourite special stages in the entire franchise. There's even a fan-made mod that lets you play just these special stages, which made this footage capture much easier. Thank you, Private Eye, for making said mod. Strangely, while Traveller's Tales made Sonic 3D's main game, these special stages were made by Sonic Team themselves. Issue 15 of official Sega Saturn magazine claims the bonus stage was the only part of Sonic Blast 3D that was programmed by Sonic Team. Huh, so both of Sonic's Saturn appearances so far have had involvement from Sonic Team. It's almost like the commonly accepted narrative that Sonic Team abandoned their namesake in order to pursue new IPs is not entirely true. In fact, Sonic's next Saturn outing, Sonic Jam, would be a Sonic Team title. The main focus of Jam was porting the mainline Mega Drive titles to the Saturn, but it also included a bonus mode called Sonic's World. This is a fully explorable 3D Green Hill Zone that houses art galleries, movie theatres, and other buildings that we walk into to access the compilation's bonus content. It also gives us a number of timed challenges within this small hub world, such as collecting so many rings or touching tails. Yeah, that could have been better named. Sorry buddy, it doesn't get any more consensual in later games either. This was incredibly cool at the time. The draw distance was outstanding for the Saturn, Sonic controlled well, and while the camera angle points to the floor at speed to potentially hide some cracks in the seams, this seemed like a lot of effort for Sonic Team to go to for what could have just been a standard menu. It's almost as if this was just a small slice of a much larger project. And yes, that is foreshadowing. That brings us to Sonic R, an on-foot racing game with 3D platforming collectathon elements by Traveller's Tales. If you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know that I adore this game. It has an amazing aesthetic, a memorable and catchy soundtrack, and a variety of unique playable characters who truly feel different to play as. Here's Sonic moving around a 3D environment at speed. Unlike Christmas Nights and Sonic Jam, the camera stays in place. It doesn't feel the need to look at the floor to mask loading. Sure, the controls aren't the best. They're an acquired taste that I've perhaps just gotten used to, but these tracks are fully explorable with multiple branching paths and goodies to find. While it lacks some of the features found in its PC port, such as the dynamic weather, I find Sonic R to be a fantastic technical achievement on the Saturn that oozes charm while being a ton of fun to play. Sonic Team again had a hand in this game, assisting Traveller's Tales. Takashi Iizuka is credited as game design director, Hirokazu Yasuhara as the map design director, and Yuji Uekawa appears as character designer. But we're not done with Sonic's official capacity on the Saturn just yet. Years ago, these images surfaced online, hinting that, like Shenmue, Dreamcast launch title Sonic Adventure might have started life on the Sega Saturn, and that Sonic's World from Sonic Jam might have been a remnant of that project. That theory turned out to be true. Retro Gamer issue 45 states there was another Sonic title in development for the Saturn that used the NiGHTS engine, namely Sonic Adventure. Yes, we'd been developing our own full 3D Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, confirms Iizuka. However, due to technical issues and the timing of the upcoming Dreamcast project, we had to end it and instead incorporated it into the Saturn's Sonic Jam. This is corroborated by the history of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic Team's work on Sonic's World was thankfully not in vain. The game was actually a port of a title that had first been created for the Saturn, Sonic Adventure. Having moved the game's development over to the Dreamcast, Sonic Team could count on new hardware that showed tremendous capabilities for its time. Not only did Sonic Team never abandon Sonic, they still worked on every title featuring the Hedgehog alongside their development of Nights into Dreams and Burning Rangers. They were actively trying to make a fully 3D mainline entry for the Saturn, which eventually became Sonic Adventure. I'm using a series of mods by Mr. Malfunction, It's Easy Actually, Samuel555V, and Solo Slacker to illustrate what Sonic Adventure might have looked like on the Saturn. I'm glad we ultimately got the higher fidelity Dreamcast version, but this is still a glimpse into a wild alternate history. Speaking of, I'd like to address Sonic Mania. Many people, myself included, have described this as a Sonic game that the Saturn never got, and as time goes on, I'm less sure that's true. Yes, 2D games looked gorgeous on the Saturn, but the industry was concentrating on 3D at the time. Even beautiful titles like Street Fighter III were dogpiled for using air quotes outdated 2D sprites. The highly detailed pixel art, number of colours on screen, and huge number of animation frames certainly wouldn't have been possible on the Mega Drive. Mania would have to have been a Saturn game had it released in the 90s, but I feel it would have been unfairly criticised and commercially unsuccessful due to player appetites at the time. That said, its special stages absolutely give off Saturn vibes, are a ton of fun to play through, and I could imagine the hardware being capable of pulling off those effects. The developers even simulate a low resolution and lack of anti-aliasing during these to make it look closer to something that could have appeared on the underappreciated Saturn. Which brings me nicely onto my next point. I can see people arguing that we can't imagine a fully 3D Saturn-era Sonic by merely combining Sonic 3D's special stages with Sonic into Dreams, Sonic's World, and Sonic R's 3D exploration stages. People might say that these examples, with the exception of Sonic R, were side modes and distractions for a reason, that the Saturn couldn't have handled what we might be envisioning. Even Takashi Iizuka said their Saturn version of Sonic Adventure faced technical limitations due to the hardware. There are a lot of common misconceptions about the Saturn's capabilities. A really basic one is that the hardware couldn't handle transparencies, which is why developers used a divoted mess to represent translucent surfaces. To that, we can present the fires in burning ranges, the way geometry fades in throughout Sonic R, or, oh yeah, Casper the Friendly Ghost. If someone tries to tell you that the Saturn can't do transparencies, just show them this. A translucent sprite of a ghost. I recorded this footage on real hardware. The Saturn can do transparencies. There are also claims that the Saturn can't do 3D, which we've already seen through multiple examples, simply isn't true. I agree that cross-platform games don't always compare favourably with their PlayStation counterparts. Maybe the textures are darker, with a seemingly more restricted colour palette. Perhaps some lighting effects are missing. It could be running at a lower frame rate or resolution. There are obvious downgrades when put next to its competition. Even so, that doesn't mean that the Saturn cannot do 3D or even that it can't do 3D well. Anyone making that claim should look at what's on screen. That is 3D! What else would you call that? There's no argument to be had. I urge everyone who thinks the Saturn was severely limited to go and play Burning Rangers, and then try to tell us what the Saturn supposedly can and can't do. I just urge people to play more Saturn games in general. I captured a lot more footage than I needed for this video, simply because I was having a great time with the Saturn's library and especially its controller. I know it's not the cheapest or easiest thing to get hold of, but use whatever means you need to and get some experience with this machine. It's not like Sega's making these games officially or legally available to purchase after all. Although I sincerely hope that statement ages like milk. Come on Sega, there's easy money sitting right there! Finally, I want to take a look at a couple of fan games that could give us some insight into what Sonic on Saturn might have looked like. When it comes to Sonic Ultra Saturn, the clue's in the name. They are very much wearing their intentions on their sleeves. However, I'm going to discount it for much the same reason as I did Mania. It's a primarily 2D game. It's an impressive 2D game, don't get me wrong, but if Sega had put this on store shelves for Christmas 1996, I doubt it would have reviewed or sold well. People were just too excited for the new third dimension, and 2D games suffered across the board as a result. Is that fair? No. Kind of ignorant? Absolutely. An accurate representation of the media and consumers' attitudes at the time? Sadly, yes. What can I say? It was a different time. Sonic Roboblast 2, on the other hand, feels like the closest thing we might have to a Saturn Sonic outing. It probably wouldn't run at this frame rate, and it might not achieve this draw distance, but the self-titled Sonic Team Jr.'s efforts are impressive and nostalgic. My understanding is that Roboblast 2 is built on a version of the Doom engine, and Doom did get a Saturn port, albeit not an ideal one due to constrained development circumstances. Again, there's an entire video's worth of background there, but the takeaway is that Doom being compromised on Saturn may not be a fair reflection of the hardware's capabilities. Roboblast 2 feels feasible, albeit at a lower fidelity, and I suspect a release like this would have appealed to a wide enough audience at the time. If you were to make some tweaks to level layouts, maybe adjust the acceleration, and combine it with Sonic 3D's special stages, you start to see a potential system seller for the Saturn. I doubt it would have been enough to have changed the Saturn's fate. That thing had bigger problems that likely made it beyond saving, but it is a useful example of what potentially could have been. If nothing else, Roboblast 2 makes me yearn for that era of gaming. What have we learned today? Well, Sonic Team did work on Sonic games for the Saturn. The Saturn is more capable than people give it credit for, and in an alternate timeline, we might have gotten a game that combined the best parts of Sonic's 3D, Jam, and R. Now I want to hear from you. What would have been your ideal Sonic game for the Saturn? Has anything in this video surprised you? And do you like my new animated avatar? You know where the comments section is. While you type away, I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters who are Crow, Tiny Jericho, Mr. Terry Chaos, Ducky Go, Francis T218, and Deliberator. You can join them for perks such as pre-release video scripts in the link in the description. You can also support the channel for free by liking, commenting, and subscribing.